Imagine, if you will, a cold, moonless night in an age-old hostel. This isn't just any ordinary hostel, but one shrouded in eerie tales and chilling whispers. Nestled in the heart of the city, it stands as a haunting relic of a bygone era, its grimy stone walls echoing with the ghostly imprints of 1,000 past lives. Now picture a group of college students, their spirits high and their hearts ablaze with the invincible fire of youth. Drawn to the mysterious allure of the hostel, they've decided to stay the night. They've heard the tales, the whispers of ghostly apparitions and midnight hauntings, but they shrug it off as nothing more than the stuff of urban legends. They're young, they're bold, and they're ready for an adventure. As the evening unfolds, they settle into their rooms, the flickering light from an old, rusted chandelier casting long, eerie shadows on the walls. The air is thick with a sense of foreboding, the silence punctuated only by the distant hoot of an owl and the occasional creaking of the old wooden floors. Yet the students laugh it off, their voices echoing through the deserted hallways, a beacon of light amidst the growing darkness. The night deepens, the darkness outside the windows growing thicker, the silence more profound. The students huddled together, sharing stories and laughter, their voices a stark contrast against the eerie quiet of the night. But as the clock ticks closer to midnight, a sense of unease begins to creep in. The laughter fades, the stories grow quieter, the atmosphere grows tenser. Yet they dismiss it, attributing it to the late hour and the chilling tales they've heard. But then, as the clock strikes midnight, the temperature drops. The flickering light from the chandelier dims, casting the hostel into an ominous gloom. A chilling wind whistles through the corridors, the rusted hinges on the doors groaning in protest. The laughter dies down, the voices fall silent, and the real horror begins. As the hands of the clock moved towards the witching hour, the hostel started revealing its true colors. The hours of the night started to stretch, and the hostel, once a haven of laughter and camaraderie, began to transform into a realm of eerie happenings. The lights, once bright and welcoming, began to flicker unpredictably. It was as if an unseen hand was toying with them, playing a game of light and shadow that sent chills down the spines of the students. And then the drafts began. Despite the windows being tightly shut, a chilling breeze would sweep through the corridors, rustling papers and making the hairs on the back of everyone's neck stand up. It was a cold that seeped into their bones, a cold that was more than just a drop in temperature. It was a cold that carried with it a sense of dread, a sense of impending doom. But it was the whispers that were the most unsettling. Low and indistinct, they seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Always just at the edge of hearing, the whispers were like a secret conversation that the students were not privy to. A conversation that seemed to be about them, for their names would sometimes float out of the murmur, making their hearts beat faster in fear. Initially, disbelief reigned. The students dismissed these occurrences as pranks or the result of their overactive imaginations. But as the disturbances escalated and became more frequent, disbelief turned into fear. The laughter and chatter that once filled the hostel was replaced by silence and hushed whispers. The once lively common room now stood deserted as everyone hurried to their rooms as soon as the sun set, hoping that the safety of their beds would protect them from the unseen terror. The horror was no longer a tale. It was their reality. They were living in a haunted hostel, and as the clock struck midnight, they knew that the haunting had only just begun. They were stuck in a nightmare that showed no signs of ending. The horror was no longer a tale. It was their reality. They say seeing is believing. That night, the students saw what they never wanted to believe. As the eerie stillness of the night enveloped the hostel, the spectral figure that had been whispered about in hushed tones and dismissed as mere folklore made its presence known. It was not a figment of imagination or a trick of the shadows, but a ghostly apparition that roamed the deserted halls of the old hostel. The figure, neither fully visible nor entirely invisible, moved with an uncanny grace that defied the laws of physics. It was an ethereal presence that sent chills down the spine. The students, huddled together in their rooms, could only watch in silent terror as the apparition drifted past their doors, its spectral glow casting an otherworldly light in the darkened corridors. The stories they had heard, the tales of the restless spirit that haunted the hostel, suddenly seemed all too real. The whispers of the past, the warnings they had dismissed as mere scare tactics, all came rushing back, each word echoing in their minds like a haunting dirge. Their laughter and jesting from earlier in the evening were now a distant memory, replaced by a palpable fear that gripped their hearts. The ghostly apparition had not just confirmed the stories they had heard, it had brought them to life, turning their skepticism into belief, their curiosity into dread. The spectral figure continued its ghostly patrol, oblivious to the terror it was instilling in the hearts of the onlookers. It seemed to be searching, reaching out for something or someone, its spectral hands reaching out in a futile attempt to grasp at the world it once knew. The haunted hostel was no longer a place of refuge for the students, but a house of horrors, a chilling reminder of the line that separates the living from the dead, the known from the unknown. As the ghostly apparition faded into the shadows, the students were left in a state of shock, their hearts pounding, their minds racing with fear and disbelief. Their night of fun had turned into a night of terror. Trapped in a world of terror, the students knew they had to escape. The hostel, once a sanctuary of warmth and camaraderie, had turned into a menacing theater of paranormal activities. The chilling specter that haunted their nights and their dreams wasn't just a figment of their imagination, but a real, tangible terror. They were living in a nightmare, and they needed to wake up. The students banded together, their fear morphing into a desperate courage. They huddled in the common room, the dim light casting long, eerie shadows on their faces. The plan was simple, yet daring. They decided to split into two groups. One would head to the hostel's main switchboard to turn off the power, plunging the entire building into darkness. The other would navigate through the pitch-black corridors to the main exit, unlocking the heavy iron gates that held them captive in their own home. Each step of the plan was fraught with danger. The specter was unpredictable, its movements erratic. It could appear anywhere at any time. The fear was palpable, but they had no choice. The students steeled themselves, their hearts pounding in their chests, their breaths coming out in short, sharp gasps. As the first group moved towards the switchboard, the second group held their breaths. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by the occasional creaking of the old wooden floorboards. The seconds ticked away, each moment stretching into an eternity. Then, with a flick of a switch, the lights went out. In the pitch-black darkness, the second group stumbled their way to the main exit. Each step was a leap of faith, each heartbeat a prayer for safety. The terror was all-encompassing, a suffocating cloak of dread. Yet they pressed on, their resolve unbroken. They had one goal in mind, one singular focus: escape. The hostel had become a haunted house, their nightmare a living reality. But they wouldn't let the specter win. They wouldn't let fear hold them hostage. The only question was, would they make it out in time? In a haunted house, the most terrifying moment is not when you see the ghost, but when the ghost sees you. And in our haunted hostel, this fear had become an unwelcome reality for our hapless students. The final showdown was upon them, a chilling confrontation between the living and the spectral. Their hearts pounded like war drums in their chests, each beat echoing the dwindling seconds of their potential doom. With a desperate plan in mind, they rallied their spirits, their courage fueling the will to escape the terrifying clutches of the ghost that haunted their once safe haven. As the students moved through the labyrinthine corridors, the ghost pursued them relentlessly, every eerie whisper and spectral appearance amplifying the dread that gripped them. They could feel its presence, like a chilling breath on their necks, a spectral specter that was as relentless as time itself. The chase was on. It was a nerve-wracking dance between the hunter and the hunted, each step they took echoing in the hollow silence of the haunted hostel. The tension was palpable. The suspense hung heavy in the air, a thick fog of uncertainty that clouded their minds. Would they make it out alive? Or would they become permanent residents of this haunted hostel, their names etched in the annals of its ghostly lore? Every corner they turned, every shadow they passed, bore the potential of the unknown. It was a battle of wits and will, their survival hinging on the strength of their resolve and their desperate desire to escape the horrifying reality they had been thrust into. As the sun rose, the hostel returned to its eerie silence like a beast satiated after a night of hunting. The spectral presence that had once dominated the night had retreated into the shadows, leaving behind a chilling tale of a night that the survivors would never forget. A night that transformed an ordinary hostel into a haunted house of horror, a tale that would be whispered in hushed tones for generations to come.